IG. I know that you hear the saying, the devil is a liar. The devil's main attribute is deceit, is lying. I would say the primary attribute probably is hatred. Is hatred, but like it's neck and neck with the devil's main attribute being lying. And there are various ways to lie. You can bold-face just lie and just say something that you know is not true. There's lying by omission, not like telling half-truths or making it seem like it's something, like alluding to something. There's lying, by trying to like paint an inaccurate portrayal, right? So for example, if I know somebody is like an avid, works out like nonstop, and does, 1,000 ab work things a day, and does yoga, like just works out constantly. But I know that information, but I don't want that person to be respected. And I say, she's on drugs. And people are like, nah, on drugs. Do you see, do you see how skinny they got? Right? So there's various ways to lie, and that's the devil. That's one of the devil's main attributes. But one thing that you'll notice is that I'll use an example of, you're a guy and you have this obsession, deep crush on a girl that's in some of your classes. And every day you sit behind her, and before class you stand in a certain spot waiting for her to pass you by so you can smell whatever fragrance she has on, and smell her hair, and you pay such close attention to everything that she puts on, and if she changed her hair, if she changed her look, down to her shoes and the way that they fit her feet, and all. You're just obsessed. You pay attention every single time she raises her hand in class. You just cling onto her every word so attentively, and you want to know everything. You need to know where she lives, who her parents are, where she, you need to know, you are obsessed with this girl. And people are like, well, why don't you just tell her? I don't want to tell her because I don't want to blow her head up. Huh? Or we could take it one step further. All you do is pay attention to this person, or you're obsessed with this person. Every single thing that they say, you cling on to their every word. But you would even take it one step further, because you're even more fixated on the idea that this person doesn't know how valuable they are. That this person doesn't. So you create a simulated reality by using tactics for this. It's almost like a gaslighting technique. You're creating circumstances and simulated realities that are false, just so this person can't realize how valuable they are. You tamper with the person's social media, so their perception is that nobody's actually paying attention to them or the things that they say. You ruin the person's reputation, so they won't, spend quality time with somebody, or, you are literally creating all of these lies and all of these situations just so this person doesn't know how powerful and valuable and amazing they are. That's the devil's work. That's what the devil does. And that's kind of a microcosm to a certain group or population in America. You are over here obsessing over everything that these people do. You want to mimic every single thing that they do. It's just it's a crazy obsession, but it's imperative that these people don't know how valuable they are. Like you're doing everything to try to make their self-esteem low, but it's deceiving, because obviously they're very valuable to you if you cling on to their every word. If you have to know everything that they're saying, that they're doing, who they're with, what they're, obviously they're consuming a great deal of your time, a great deal of your mental space. So that obviously they're very, very, very important to you. They're very, very, very important. You just don't want them to feel important. You just don't want them to know that they're special. You just don't want them to know that they're valuable. And that's very deceptive. That's very, 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 very deceptive. And get angered at them even, So it's interesting as far as the culture that we have, the society that we have. But again, this conversation's been about them. Really, it comes down to you. I've said this before. The idea of, I don't know, something like white supremacy. Like, I'm not going to spend my time focused on people who are full of hate. That's just not what I do. I have other things to do. I can think of better ways to spend my time than to focus on people who are full of hate. But even that, it's like, in theory, like, I don't really have that much of a problem with it. I don't really care how somebody feels about themselves. Like, if you are coming together with other people because you feel like your race is better than other races, you're allowed to. Like, you are actually allowed to feel better about, you're allowed to feel better than other people. You're allowed to. That's within, like, your human rights. You're allowed to feel however you want. You can feel whichever way you want about yourself and the things that make you proud, that you're allowed to. Now, the minute that you try to start to ruin someone else's life, the minute that you start to tamper with somebody else's life, the minute that you start to coerce situations that are against somebody's human rights, that's a violation to that person's personal freedom, you're actively doing things to hurt people, to damage people based off of your superiority complex, that's when it's a problem. That's when your life gets screwed up, by doing things like that. And the same thing with black people. Like, there are black supremacists who believe that melanin is a superpower, who believes that, that black people are better than everybody else. And they say, like, well, if black people weren't better, then why would they go to such great lengths to keep us down, to try to mess with our self-esteem, to try to mess with our heads? Because they know that we're better. That's their mentality. And to them, I say, you're allowed to. Even morally, there are certain people whose lifestyle you may not agree with. You're allowed to agree or disagree with anything. But the bottom line is, are you actively going to hurt those people? Are you actively trying to take food out of these people's mouths, out of their children's mouths, take food off their table? Are you actively trying to ruin someone's life? You're allowed to feel however you want about somebody. And I think that that's really what we like we can talk about, yes, we need to combat these things. It's all one race. It's the human race. And that's probably more accurate than not. I believe scientifically, DNA, there are differences in people's DNA, but I believe scientifically it's not that significant that, people put too much of an emphasis on things like race or whatever. That may be the case. But the thing is, are we going to say that and just say, let's ignore genocide? Let's ignore the cruelty that certain people are face day to day. Not just cruelty as far as we don't want to let you in. Cruelty is actually like, we're going to prevent you from actually even being able to survive. Are we going to ignore how race is playing out on our planet and say, we're all one human race, so we're just going to ignore how how people are affected, how deeply melanated people are affected, because it is true scientifically and intellectually that we are one human race. I don't think that that's really the proper way to deal with it. We have to understand this whole thing, this matter, intellectually. But we also have to put our sociologists, anthropologists, social observation hats on if we're really here to make a change and really here to make a difference, and start to ask the questions: why are melanated people treated so poorly globally? Why are they undermined? Why are they deprived? Why are they generally living in poverty across nations, across continents? We can't just say we are one, but 99.9% of the planet isn't living like we are one. So you have to be very careful. We live in a society that's so caught up in rhetoric and dissecting what people say, but really it's about the actions. And we live in a very, very deceitful world. I made the point yesterday that, and I think that we are enough removed emotionally from this conversation. Americans, so I'm talking to Americans specifically, I think we're enough removed from this conversation emotionally, because this is stuff that happened a year ago. But when we talk about the presidential election, we talk about, Biden and Harris. We talk about, how the past, 4 years prior to Biden and Harris winning the presidential election, all we saw all around, D.C., and we saw it all over the news, was F Trump. It was like this, like you would have believed that like 90% of America hated the guy. Like according to between social media, between the news, between the spray painting that you saw, you would believe 90% of America hated Trump. You believe majority of America hated Trump. And you would believe that Trump supporters were very few and far between. And then when we see the election, Nazir Ra was the man who made the point. He was like, things shouldn't have been that close, though. Numbers really shouldn't have been that close. It should have been a landslide. And I don't know what the final poll results were, but I think it was over 40%, 44% that Trump got. That's damn near half. And that's not something based off of this is what I'm saying. Our society is very deceptive. People are very deceptive. They lie a lot to us. And they deceive us a lot. Because I know my perception, and I had this debate with my son, who's brilliant, who said, but Mom, you got to understand where you're living. We're in D.C. right now. And I'm like, what's that mean, sweetheart? Well, he's like, think about it. It's a very, DC's very liberal. He's like, so your environment, you're surrounded by people who are are not. I said, He's like, that's going to skew your perception. I said, that's a good point. And even with, a lot of the things that I've been going through, I know DC, I said top 10, but I know DC is top 20 most affluent cities. It's got the highest percentage of millionaires. So chances are when I go outside today, I'm going to walk past a bunch of millionaires. The people that live in my condo, people that live in this building, millionaires, So our environment can very much skew our perception. DC is a very affluent city. Maryland, PG County has the highest population of black millionaires. And so where we're raised, where we're nurtured, that can very much skew our perception. When most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Most people are poor, both here on American soil and globally. But if we live in a very affluent environment, like a Washington, D.C., like a New York City, like San Francisco, some of these places that if you're making $80,000, you're barely getting by in some of these cities. That can very much skew your perception. And so we live in a DC, yes, and it's typically, DC has typically been very democratic. It's been very liberal. And so he's saying that the reason why, but even when you tapped into the news, MSNBC, CNN, you would have thought it would have been a landslide, right? That Trump would have won. I mean, that Biden Harris would have won like at least 75%. The way that it was, the perception was that everybody hated Trump. So what does that mean? That means that there were a lot of people that were like getting at the water cooler with their coworkers and saying, yeah, man, we got to get that guy out of office, to appear to be whatever, non-racist, non-this, non-that, whatever. But when the voting came around, they voted for the man. So if you want to keep it real, if you want to have a very accurate perception of your environment, you have to realize how deceitful these people are. These people are very deceitful. They will bend over backwards for you to not know your worth and for you to not know your value. That is like a huge part of their objective. And they will pretend to be in solidarity with you, right? Because that was one thing that was bonding Americans, black and white Americans, their quote unquote hatred for this racist president. And I'm not going to get it too much into politics, but I think a lot of people who are a little bit more well-learned about some of these conversations have a particular issue with Joe Biden as far as his take on the 94 crime bill and how that led policy-wise, guys. Policy-wise. You guys are too consumed with a smiling white guy who's going to show up at a black church and sing, lift every voice and sing with you all. Who's going to pull up his sleeves and maybe go to HBU and shoot a hoop with you all. Oh yeah, he's cool, he's down. But meanwhile, his single policy, put so many black men in prison. Left so many black mothers alone to struggle to be the mother and the father for their children. Black children fatherless. And you've never heard this man once say that he apologized for the 90. I don't, at least, maybe I'm misinformed. I've never heard him apologize for the 94 crime bill. And I haven't seen, to hell with an apology, I haven't seen his actions. I haven't seen his actions contribute to anything but that mentality. That's like one of my, like, I don't care about anything, like personally, whatever. I got my personal issues with the man, but majority of it is the 94 crime bill and how he contributed to mass incarceration and who my father was and how he designated decades of his life, like 20 years of his life, just to fight against mass incarceration. So it's like, that's something that's like really core to me. And this is something that, this man, policy-wise, guys, and in DC, it's all about the policies. You guys are attacking racism in ways that it really doesn't even need to be. It's here in DC. These are the real racists here in DC, guys. The ones that are making these policies. All they got to do is sign a bill. And he within his first 30 days in office, signed bills for Asian community, the trans community, but has never ever addressed reparations or financial empowerment for foundational Black Americans. Has not addressed on methods to attack the prison industrial complex. And as actually a part of like some very dark stuff. Him and his minions. If you knew how they felt about us, if you knew the things that they were doing to keep us humiliated, like to try to humiliate us. So don't get lost in the sauce. You guys are way too quick to go with what appears to be one way or another. You really need to start looking at things a little bit more with more of a discerning eye. Not be so quick to just jump on this or that, because the devil is a liar. And last point, with the polls and how, we're emotionally removed from this conversation. It's been a year, so we can talk about this unemotionally or whatever. What does that mean? That means that if nearly 50%, 44%, 45, whatever, of people did not want the current president in office, what does that mean? That means that he is governing damn near half of a population that did not want him to be there. What does that mean? That means that he has to apply a level of maturity and not be petty and getting back at people who don't like him for various reasons that they have an unfavorable opinion of him. And he has to understand that his role is to protect and serve all American citizens, even the ones that didn't want to see him there, even the ones that don't like him. His duty is to uphold a constitution that gives freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press. That is his at the highest level, because our governing body should have a commitment to that constitution at the highest level. What does that mean? That means that somebody's rhetoric could be so irritating, like nails on a chalkboard. It could be so against your principles and everything that you believe, but you would still have to protect their freedom to exercise that right. That means that because you vowed, you took an oath to protect and serve this constitution that allows people to pray to who they want to believe in what they choose to write whatever, freedom of press. You can't silence someone or take them off of social media. That is against their constitutional rights, and that is against everything that you swore and you vowed to protect. The governing body should be the ultimate patriots. And it takes a high level of maturity to protect and serve people who don't even like you, who don't even want to see you there in office. But that is what you signed up for. So just tell me, because I'm not about deception. This conversation is about deception. If the Constitution is just something there to be cute, just let us know. Just let us know. If really we don't have freedom of speech, let us know, please. If we don't have freedom of religion, just let us know, because I just don't like deception. If America has become less of a democracy and more of a dictatorship, where now we are governing people and their freedoms and telling them what they can and can't say on social media and policing their speech, and an American right? And it's bizarre that some people that want to police people's speech are all about human rights, are the curators, are the pioneers of the human rights campaign. Time out. Isn't someone's opinion and freedom of speech, isn't that their human right? Even if it may happen to rub you the wrong way, even if their freedom of speech is not something that is looking at you in a favorable manner, isn't that still their freedom? So enough with the bull. If America is a dictatorship, just let us know. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to ignore the Constitution, just let us know. Just let us know. And then that at least gives us the free will to say, do we want to remain in America? Do we want to stay on this American soil? Because new rules. When we signed up with our free will to be American citizens, we've signed up with the understanding that our Constitution was going to be upheld by our governing body. So we use our free will to remain on American soil to say, yeah, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, various freedoms was what attracted us to this nation. Now, if that's not the case, just let us know and we can go to some place that's more suitable. Peace, y'all.